You're listening to the Captain Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
How you doing, shipmate?
How are you doing, sir? Always good to see you.
So tonight we got a guest that's got knowledge, lots and lots and lots of knowledge. This man went to work for the Raiders as a scout in 1978 and was with them for 33 years, a third of a century, man. This guy's an OG. This guy knows a thing or two about the Raiders and Al Davis. So, Captain, you should probably introduce this guy.
Well, the best way to say this is that I'm proud to call Jon Kingdon a friend of mine, because there are very few people that we have had a chance to do interviews with on the shows here. And Jon, I've known Jon for several years, and it's unique that when you get a chance to know somebody above and beyond just saying, hey, this guy played for the Raiders or this guy did this for the Raiders. Jon Kingdon is a friend of mine, and I'm very proud to say that. In fact, that one of the things here is that actually this is Bruce's, but I have 2 copies of the great book that they wrote. I say they because here's I'm only have so much space here. There's 2 copies of this book, and it's written by my friend Jon Kingdon along with Bruce Kebrick. And so I have 2 copies. One's autographed by Jon, one's autographed by Bruce. One of these days, if I can ever figure out how to get a hold of Steve Corcoran, I'll have him autograph one of the copies as well. But it's not only is it a great book, and I don't say that because I'm blowing smoke, is if you want to know stories about the Raiders, about Al Davis, about the drafts, about the things that not too many people know about, this is the book. And I've said this for a lot of the shows that I've said you need to read Behind the Raider Shield by Jon Kingdon and Bruce Kebrick. So I can't give it any more of an intro than to introduce my friend to the screen. And something just dropped off the desk. I'll figure out what that is in a minute.
We're blessed to have Jon Kingdon on our show tonight.
Jon Kingdon.
Well, there you go. Well, it's nice to meet Jack Daniel. It's a first. It's nice to meet you originally. And I asked her, I don't know if you've seen any of the interviews, but a lot of people say, why did you write this book? And the reason was, when we were scouting, you could be in it by yourself. You could be 5 people, 6 people, 2 people. And there was always a little break when you were waiting for someone to come in, and you would start to tell stories about what went on in your draft room. Why did you pick this guy? Who did you really want? Back and forth. And I would tell, gee, this is what happened. And we wanted this guy. We took that guy. And invariably the people would say, you ought to write a book. Well, I once told that story to Bruce Kebrick, and Bruce said he had the same reaction. So, we just had it in the back of our minds to do that. And then, Steve Corcoran had covered the team for the Oakland Tribune, East Bay Times. And after I left the team, we were having lunch, and he says, what are you thinking about doing? He said, I was thinking about writing a book. And he suddenly says, oh my God, I've always wanted to write the book. I said, well, he brings a writing skill, and and then I said that could really work, and he said, but it has to be warts and all, and in other words, it has to be an honest book. Now, when I was writing it, and people found out, well, are you gonna, is it gonna be a rip job? And that was the last thing that we really wanted to do. Now, I could put a lot of things in there that would look personally embarrassing. You can do that for anybody. And I said that, that's not what we're looking to do. We showed Al on the human side on some of the stories, and we all got together, and we each brought a different perspective. Bruce started in the league about 10 years before I did with the San Diego Chargers, and Sid Gilman, who was, the man really responsible for much of Al's success. And, and then I, got to be particularly close with Al on a lot of levels. And then Corcoran brought a reporter's perspective. So we try to bring, 3 different views. And I like to think it came together in kind of a unique a way of looking at the team. So,
well, like Jack said, as far as books, this one is probably the most comprehensive. That's why I've got it loaded on Audible, and Jack's going to give me your email so I can request a book from you.
Sure, no, we'll get that, absolutely. And it's like I said, Greg Papa. I don't know, Jack, if you know him, but he did the play-by-play for a number of years with the Raiders, and ridiculously they let him go. And he's doing the 49ers and doing a great job. I mean, the first year he did them, they went to the Super Bowl. But, he was a man that had a great deal of love and respect for Al Davis. And he said this was the best and most honest book about Al Davis and the Raiders. And then there's been some people around the league, Lance Newmark in Detroit, and Scott Fitterers, the GM in Carolina, got the book, and both all commented, connected with me and really were very positive about it. So, when people in the business like it, that was always a pretty good sign too. So
I'm going to actually show you some of the things. And again, this is not a call-in. We're going to wind Jon up and let him go. But if there are things that you want to talk to Jon about, please, this is where you get your input into the comments section. And Jon's only going to be able to be here for about an hour at most, so make sure you get your questions in. And I know that, I'm gonna wind you up. And this is obviously one of the better ones as well. We know you were tight with Al. I mean, the picture that we had on for the promo for this show of you in your younger days, you were a good looking dude back then, right?
Yeah, I was wearing my wig then. No, it was it was a good. It's a funny that picture. I don't know if anyone saw it. It's a picture of me and Al on the field, and it was in 1985, so that we're talking 37 years ago, and I didn't write about it in the book, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw somebody, a young kid, taking the picture of me and Al. So I went over to him after I left Al, and I said, were you taking a picture of me and Al? And he goes, oh, is that okay? Is that okay? I said, I didn't mean. I said, yeah, could I get a copy of it? And he was very nice about it. And I've had it for, since 85, and we needed his permission to put it in the book. So we were tracking him down, and he ended up in the Sports Photography Sports Hall of Fame. And then the next article I read, he died in his 50s. It's unfortunate, but we tracked down his widow, and she was really very pleased to give us permission, and very touched that we did it. So that was kind of a fun way to get that picture. I've still got the original. It was actually ended up in the Santa Barbara Times. That's who he was working for, and he became, like I said, a very fine photographer. And then there's another picture that's kind of funny, is Calvin Branch, who was a scout for us, and it played for us, and then was scouting, and he's still scouting for the Raiders. They were smart to keep him, but he was a scout for us, and we had two safeties that went down that were hurt, and Calvin was really a compulsive workout guy. He was always in great shape, and he's been scouting for about 2 or 3 years for us. And then Al called me and said, "Do you think Calvin would be in shape so that we could sign him and put him in a couple of games right now?" So I called Calvin up, and his salary as a player was probably 10 times more than what he would be making as a scout. And he jumped on it, and he's out there, and he played, and he made some tackles, and I'm on the road, and someone's saying, I was scouting with Calvin 2 weeks ago, and I'm watching you guys play, and there's Calvin making a play. So it was after, I believe, a Tennessee game. I was looking on the sideline, and there was Calvin in uniform, and he grabbed like 7 players and lined them up, and he stood behind them, and they took a picture. And I asked him, what was that about? He said, "I scouted all those guys." So it was a Jerry. God, I just blanked on the guy's name. You can get the photo credit there, but I tracked him down, and he was the guy that took the picture. And I said, we'll pay. He said, "Hey, just send me a copy of the book." So those pictures are kind of fun. We got a picture of the Tom Brady tuck, where it really shows that it shouldn't have been it should have been a fumble, and that one actually cost a lot of money. I guess the guy who took the picture really made a lot of money out of it, but we thought it was important enough to put it in there. But anyway, here's Edward Winchell here is asking my feelings about Al, and there was a fondness, and it wasn't an easy. There were a lot of tough times that I dealt with him. That it wasn't very friendly. And just an example, the first year that Ron Wolf had left. So, and Ron was a great scout, and he really was the power in our department, and we weren't as strong as we became. And that was the year that Brett Favre and Marinovich came out. And what we would do is we would turn our reports into Al. And, this is how we got everyone ranked by rounds, by positions, our top 50. And Brett Favre, we had in the first round, and we had him as the 5th best player in the entire draft. And Marinovich, we had in the second round, is a very talented guy, but he had issues. Now, I didn't know they were going to be heroin issues, but there were marijuana stuff, and he was late for meetings and such. So we had him in the second round, and anyway, it was a big battle, and what happened, and he wasn't gonna back down. And in fact, even though the room was strong for Favre, he had 2 people to be yes men for him, and one of them was Art Shell, who was the coach at the time, a guy named Steve Ortmeyer, who was a special teams coach. And Ortmeyer pops up and says, "Well, after I went through my whole diatribe about the issues with Todd in the meetings, Steve said, 'Well, geez, everyone I've talked to there says it's positive.'" So after the meeting, I said, "Well, who have you talked to?" "I talked to everybody." He says, "Well, I talked to Marv." I said, "Marv Marinovich, Todd's father?" He says, "Oh, yeah." He says, "Everything's positive there." Well, Todd lasted 2 years, but again, where I really, got into it with Al that first year, there was a guy, Ray, the linebacker with Baltimore,
Ray Lewis.
Ray Lewis was coming out, and Angie Koya, who was a great scout, and he really liked him and had him as a high pick. But Ray Lewis was like 6 foot tall, and Al, was not big on shorter linebackers. But so he said, we really need. I'd really like our defensive coordinator to go see the guy. That was Fred Whittingham. So I cleared it with Tom, with Mike White, and Fred went out to the work, to see him work out. So that afternoon, Al called for a meeting of the coaches. Well, he goes into, well, where's Fred Whittingham? Well, he's in Miami. He's working out Ray Lewis. And Al goes, what? We got Greg Beekert, who was a very good player, but, Ray Lewis was going to, as a Hall of Famer, going to be. And he says, Mike White, do you know anything about that? Oh, no, I don't know anything about it. So that afternoon, Al calls me in the office and he says, well, why did you send Fred to Miami? And I gave him the reasons. And, we have him. Oh, I don't know what you're thinking. We got Beekert. You know how much it costs? Blah, 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 blah. He's really kind of going into me like that. All right, I accept it. And I'm walking out and he goes, and Mike White didn't know anything about it. Now I kind of, and Al was pretty good. If you pushed you too far and you jump back, he was very good about understanding it. And I go, he said that? He goes, yeah. I said, well, he's an effing liar. And Al goes, okay. So anyway, I was talking to someone about it, that Al really kind of pissed me off. And someone was talking about Al about it. And Al says, hey, as soon as I said it, I forgot it. Which on one level, I never forgot that. And I never, I let it roll off my back. And the other, I was a little pissed that, he really jumped me pretty good. But that was that. But anyway, one of the reasons that we became, closer, and had a real understanding is we had a lot of things in common. Obviously, he was like 29 years older than me, which is fine. But we both had a Brooklyn connection. I was born in Brooklyn and moved out to Long Island, and I was born in Massachusetts and moved to Brooklyn. And we were both Jewish, which I think helped. So we had an understanding. He could, say things to me that, and kind of expose himself a little bit, not knowing everything. And he didn't like to do that with a lot of people. So it was like, there's like two big Jewish holidays: Rosh Hashanah, which is the New Year, and Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement, and you fast on Yom Kippur. So it was Rosh Hashanah, and Al, calls me up. He goes, "This holiday, is this the big one? Is this the one you don't eat on?" I said, "No, this is Rosh Hashanah." So we had that connection, and we got to be again. There was a connection there that. A lot of people didn't have, and I could, he would come and, I remember he was giving us, I think we had hired a new coach, and, he called me into his office. He said, "This is what I'm going to be saying in the introduction." He went through a lot of stuff, and he had one line I particularly liked. I said, "No, that's a really good line." And he perked up. "Oh, really? That's great. Yeah, you like that? Oh, that's good." So he actually stressed that line. So, that was the connection. Something about Al that no one knows. He loved watching women play basketball. I mean, he really loved it as a sport. And, I had to stay up on top of things, be on top of things. And it was one of the things in dealing with Al, and I would explain to people that got hired there, if Al asks you a question and you don't have the answer, in the future, always have that answer, because that question is going to be coming about anything. And so I learned to, have the, when the WNBA draft came out, I would download it, and he would invariably call me up. Where did this person go? Where did that person go? Things like that. He was a big fast food guy. I mean, it was like, he ate at a lot of nice places, but one time I took the film over and we're watching it, and we're done. He says, "They're bringing this was down in Marina Del Rey when we were down in LA. He says, they're bringing in a Kentucky Fried Chicken just down the road. He was like really excited about it. So, all right. So, he, like I said, he really liked fast food, and just and I wrote about it in the book. One time I picked him up and I was taking him back, and he said, I'd really like to get I'm kind of hungry. Is there a burger place around here? And just down the road, there was a place called Fat Burger, which is a big burger place down in LA, and it's really good. I mean, if you got a name like Fat Burger, and it was really good. I said, well, there's, we can go in. He says, well, geez, let's try it. So, all right, we pull in. It was late. There was no one else in there except the guy behind the counter. So we walk in, and he goes, Mr. Davis, back so soon? What is it, the third time this week? And I kind of look at him. He's like sheepish, like embarrassed. He's, oh, I just love this place. He was like embarrassed to say he liked that kind of stuff. God, I just there's a lot of other things that are not. It'll come to my mind quickly enough. But he was please.
I said I'm going to clean up one question because I didn't like the way it was posted here. But what was the feelings, or and I'll again cleaning it up, the feelings towards Jamarcus Russell pre and then obviously post? Well,
look, let me say this: he was really talented. I mean, he was about as talented as any, and he might be, I could say he might be the most talented quarterback that ever came out of the draft, and the most underachieving quarterback that came out. Now, Bruce Kebrick had been going to LSU for 40 years, and he knew everybody. And he went out there and he talked to coaches, he talked to the strength coach, he talked to the equipment guy. And this is a guy, Brooklyn. There you go. I grew up in Borough Park for a couple of years, but anyway, the thing that came out of it, this is a guy who they had to wake up and they had to get him to class and they had to make sure he did his work and they had to get him to practice and get him on the plane and stuff like that. And one of the problems is he got an enormous amount of money to start off with. So, what do I need to, do stuff like that? And he came in late and he just didn't work very hard. Now there's a story that went out that's not exactly accurate, that the coaches intentionally gave him a blank DVD to look at, a lot of the plays and the breakdowns and such for the playbook. And then they brought it back and they asked him, gee, what'd you see? And I saw this and this and this. But that's not, in a sense, he's wrong. What happened was they did it by accident. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was our video guy, John Otten, told me the story that he got the DVD back and they were going to make a copy. And they realized at that point that they had accidentally sent him a blank DVD. But, that was Jamarcus. I mean, he wasn't evil. I mean, he was actually kind of a fun guy, but he just had no sense of pride in pretty much anything. In fact, there was a guy, George Karras, who was a big car guy. He was our pro personnel guy, and he loved cars. And Jamarcus had like a Bentley, a really expensive car. And he says, geez, look at that car. It's a big white car. Boy, that's a pretty car. I says, yeah, but that's Jamarcus' car. Look at it. It's dirty. Now, if you're going to have a $300,000 car, you might want to have it clean. And then, there was a story. So like, the key thing, again, the way they had somebody on top of Jamarcus at LSU to make sure he did all that stuff. So Al hired a guy named Donnie Martin, who had played for the Raiders for a little bit. And he says, your job is to keep up with Jamarcus, 24/7. Well, he really wasn't very good at it. And we were playing in Houston and we're checking everybody in. And everyone said, well, who are we missing? We're missing Jamarcus. That's the one guy that was not on the bus. And I'm sitting next to Donnie Martin. I said, Donnie, Jamarcus. And he goes running off and he finally gets him on. And they fired Donnie the next day. I mean, he just forgot the reason he was hired. But he came in and if he, like I said, if he had any sense of pride, he could have been, truly a great player, and he wasn't. And So I think he's maybe helping to coach high school football back in Louisiana or something. And I'm not sure where he is financially, but I remember we had a guy who was in charge of the charters, and excuse me, and he told me how Jamarcus had come to him and told him he wanted to buy a private jet. He's got millions of dollars, and the guy talked him out of it, which probably saved Marcus from going bankrupt, because evidently it's really expensive to the upkeep and the storage and such, and probably saved him many dollars and such. So, but that was Jamarcus. He was just out of his league in the head wise, and it just you had to get rid of him, and it's sad because he could have had opportunities to play, but he always showed up out of shape. Even at the he was one of those guys that went to what happens now when they're coming out of college. You get these agents, and they would pay for him to go to training facilities, and they get a private room and a hotel, and they get all their food taken care of, and they're working hard. And you got to be a top player to get that much treatment. And and our guy, it was what's his name, the guy that came out of Notre Dame, the quarterback the same year, who wasn't turned out to not be that good, went to Cleveland. But this guy, was there early and worked out late. And Jamarcus was going to the strip joints every night. And we
Brady Quinn. John, did we lose you?
Oh, he's frozen.
Okay, are we back on?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Brady Quinn, by the way.
Brady Quinn, thank you. And I guess he's an announcer now. I mean, because it fits, because he worked really hard. But he just that was Jamarcus. What are you gonna do? But the point being is, Lane Kiffin had his issues, but he was a very good personnel guy, and he was just opposed to it, and as were we, although. The guy we wanted was Calvin Johnson, who would have been great, and he beat us a couple of times. But there's your Jamarcus stories, and periodically I think I'll see an updated story, and of course he's blaming everybody but himself. And
couple things here as well, and I'll tune you up there, OG, for one. But and I was going to say this as well. It's with Al's love for women's basketball. It's no wonder that Mark probably bought the Aces.
I don't know. Mark, really wasn't around much at all when I was there, but yeah, and I think from the outside it looks like they've hired good people. The coach, who was with San Antonio, and I guess they lost to New York the other day. But yeah, it looks like, I guess he's going to build them an arena and such. So that could be a connection there.
Go ahead, OG. I got one after you're done.
Oh, well, there was another question I saw earlier in the chat. And this is a fan favorite of the old school guys. And he wasn't a player. Run Jones. Did you know him?
Let me start off with a real sad story. Well, first of all, do you know why he got the nickname Run?
No, I don't know. That's the thing. That's why you're here to inform us.
Oh, okay. Well, George Run Jones. He was there he was there before I started. So, in fact, I think it was Ben Davidson brought him by, and so he became. And he had his own business cleaning offices and such. And then they hired him to do the Raiders. And then at some point, he was living in the building, and it was and he was just doing the Raiders and such. But he was a roller derby skater, and he had a technique where he would be running on his skates, and which I guess was unique, and that's where he got the name Run Jones. And so he was a lot of fun and a genuine character. And the sad story was, it was a Saturday, and it was during the let's see, it was a Saturday before a game, and our scouts would come in December, and we would meet for about 5 days, sort of a pre-draft meeting, putting it together. And there was one coach there, a guy named George Martinez, and just us, and we had a lunch break. And so we were watching TV, and Runner was there, and there was some game on, and about 1:05 we went back in our meetings. And George Martinez, about 10 minutes later, came running in and says, "There's something wrong with Run." We went running in there, and he was laying there on the ground. He was purple. And, obviously he'd had a heart attack. And I said, "Does anyone know CPR?" And nobody did, but I had taken CPR. So I went down and I'm doing CPR, and Mickey Marvin is doing the breaths, and I'm kind of going in my mind, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, breathe, blah, blah, blah. And his color's coming back. I'm going, "Oh my God, this stuff actually works." And bang, bang, bang. And we called 911. And the people got there, the EMTs got there quickly, and they worked on it for about 45 minutes, but he didn't make it. But, the EMT people, came up and thanked me for what I did. And, you did everything right. And, it wasn't anything courageous, but I was, if anyone's listening, take a CPR class, because if we had just stood around, I would have really felt bad about that. But he was a genuine character, and there was a great deal of affection for him from everyone, in the organization, and he was kind of fun. And one time he was, I guess, he was going to a Super Bowl party. Because he was kind of a public figure that people know. And he says, and he had this real, "Well, what do you want me? What do you think I should say?" I said, "George, I'll give you a story, and but write it down." So he says, and I'll quick it up. He says, "Well, so when you get up, you say, well, Joe Blow, called up the Raiders, and we need someone to talk at our Super Bowl party. So send us the most important person in the organization." Again, this is Run. You'll be Run talking. And there'll be laughter. I wait for the laughter, and then you'll tell them, "Well, they called back Joe Blow, and he said, well, the most important guy doesn't want to show up." He says, "Well, send us the best-looking guy in the organization." So everyone laughs again, and he goes, he says back, "Well, the best-looking guy doesn't want to be in your doesn't want to be at your Super Bowl party either." And then he says, "All right, well, just send us anybody." Well, ladies and gentlemen, how can I turn you down 3 times? So that was his big joke. And I asked him how it went over. He said they loved it. So he was, he's fun. You did what you could for him. And he was, like I said, a lot of people knew him. In fact, they had a great memorial for him. And there was an incredibly wide range of people, from, people in 3-piece suits, and business people, and, people with, and Hell's Angels people were there, and it was just it was a very nice tribute to him and such. But that was Run. He was again, that it was sad that but he had stories. I think he was a POW in the Korean War and such, and but he lived a full life, and he lived a life that he thank you, Anna. Yeah, take CPR. It doesn't take a lot if you save a life, but he'd tell those stories too, and again, it's nice that he lived the life that he was very happy with and had a lot of fun. And
Right. Well, he's a fan favorite too. Like the fans love him.
Absolutely. Well, his son is still working there too, in some kind of some position on the football side. So that was a nice touch as well. But there's another one. Go ahead, please.
The one question, and I wanted to get caught up on chat because I wanted on this as well. So apologies. And would Al Davis approve of the way his son is running the team?
Well, I'm not there in front, and the team in a lot of ways hasn't done well, and they've done some things, but I don't know if you're up. The New York Times, the international paper wrote a very scathing article about the dysfunction of the organization and a lot of claims of sexism and people being treated badly and such, and in their paper. And then the Vegas paper was doing a follow-up, and how would Al feel about it? And I said, "Geez, how would anybody feel about it?" And the thing that struck me is, and obviously it looks like they're trying to address it, but in the article in the New York Times, they talked about a guy named Dan Ventrelli, who had stood in as the president after Mark Medane went out, and I guess they talked to him with the Times, and he talked about all this sexism going on, and he presented it to Mark, and nothing was happening, and he presented it to the league. And then so when Mark found out, I guess when he presented to the league, they fired Ventrelli. And which, if you're gonna, accuse me, and that didn't surprise me. But then the Las Vegas paper did a follow-up story on it, and they talked to a lot of people, and they were just as critical of Ventrelli with sexism as well, which I kind of found shocking. But it sounds like they hired a very talented woman as president, and my first thought was, did she have much football experience? And as it turns out, her husband was the next football player. So it sounds like they hired a pretty talented person to be at least president, and we'll see how that goes. But from that end, and then Reggie McKenzie was, when he was hired, I thought, Mark didn't have a lot of experience. They really needed a general manager with a lot of experience, which was the last thing Reggie brought, and that didn't work. And then, I was a big fan of Gruden's, and I thought they were very fortunate they didn't get caught on the Rooney Rule, giving minorities an opportunity to at least interview, and they did interview a couple of people, but that I was surprised they got away with it, because those were very inappropriate. They weren't people that would have been appropriately for the head job, and like I said, I'm a big Gruden fan. When when this stuff came out on those old emails, that was just, I had no idea that he would say things like that. Now, I wasn't surprised he was as strident as he was, because he was a very strident person, and spoke very strongly about everything. But that was disappointing. And then Mayock, bringing him in as a personnel guy. I mean, he was a TV guy. I mean, that just So I think getting rid of him, I think he hit a couple of picks, later on, but those early picks were terrible. So now it's New England West, and I don't know the personnel, the GM at all. But we'll see where it goes. But there must be 10 or 12 people from the Patriots that have come in the scouting department and on the coaching staff. So we'll see where that goes.
Okay. And again, get your questions in. OG's going to ask one, and again, if you have any questions, put them in the comments in the chat, and we'll try to get them up over to John. Go ahead, there, OG. I'm sorry.
So after Al passed and Mark took over. Mm-hmm. How much did he have to do with day-to-day operations?
Well, Al died like in the middle of the season. I think it was, it was before the New Orleans game or Houston game. Houston, I think.
It was before Houston.
Houston game, yeah. And basically the organization just kind of was running on its own, and once he asked me to asked me to evaluate a player, and he said he used to bring his name up to his dad, and the dad would just brush him off. So it was a guy who had come out 5 years earlier, and he says, "Yeah, I saw this guy in the fourth quarter of the last preseason game for the Chargers, and and every time I brought him up my dad, he just said, 'Get out of here,' in no uncertain terms." And so he asked, so Al was not around. So I evaluated the guy, and it really made no sense. I mean, this is the last quarter of the last preseason. You got backups against backups. So I watched it, and the guy had looked good in this game, against the subs. And he was on their practice squad that year. And the next year he blew his knee out and was IR. And the next year he's in arena football. And the next year he's been out 5 years. And so I said, bring him in, we'll bring him in. But they had a lockout, so I couldn't bring him in. And then finally at training camp, he came in around 4.8, and that was that. But, prior to that, the only thing Al ever said was that we knew about the Raider image store, and he was trying to get fanny packs in there and things like that. But he really wasn't involved on the football side of it. And, I've seen it where, he's talked about how, he knows what he doesn't know. which people have said, so it sounds like he wasn't too involved with this sexism stuff or whatever. Again, it sounds like it, at least from Ventrelli's perspective. So I really don't know how involved he is. And
So then, realistically, Ventrell was the person who was running day-to-day operations when all this was going on.
Again, Bedane, if this Mark Bedane, I thought, did a hell of a job in here. And I thought he would, from what I could tell, he was the guy that really got the move. He was got his MBA at Cal and such. And then out of the blue, he and a bunch of finance guys let go. And, there's speculation and such. And then, I think it's Ventrelli. It's hard to say. He wasn't really a football guy in that sense. And, and Mayock, I guess, was there as well. So it's hard to say what was going on. But, all I know is when Al was there, we didn't have those issues. And obviously Amy was, in the front office there. And so I don't know of any time that issues like that were brought up. But I think there's a lot more women within the organization now than when I was there. But, it was a growing number. But, I think people understood that if there was ever an issue like that, that would, you're making a career decision if you're going to be hassling people like that at least on a sexual level or any other level like that. So, Al always saw himself as an egalitarian and took a lot of pride in that. But, my favorite story about Al was, I don't know if you remember David Hum. David was the backup quarterback to Kenny Stabler all these years. And then he played for Buffalo and he played for the Colts and such. And then he came back and he was always the guy we called back if our backup quarterback got hurt. And and I was always the guy to call him up. David, we need you to come on in. Boom. David, we need you to come on in. So I think it was the third time we did it. He was the backup to Plunkett, and he was there for the Super Bowl in '83. Got the ring. So in '84, we're playing the Chicago Bears, and you can look this game up. And people say it might have been the most vicious game.
I know the game.
Yeah, the Bears were just getting really good, and we're coming off the Super Bowl. And we're a good team, Howie Long, Alzado, Bill Pickel, Millen, just a tough team. And the Bears with that, that fit, whatever that, the Buddy Ryan defense that people hadn't figured out how to block. So Plunkett didn't dress for the game. He had something wrong. So Wilson was the quarterback and David's the backup. And so what happens towards the end of in the middle of the second quarter, Mark Wilson gets hurt. I think he hurts his thumb, and he goes into the locker room, and David comes in, and David loved to play, and he's moving the team up and down, and then he gets hit. He gets hit high, he gets hit low, he is down. And, and I heard these stories later, he's just laying there, and George Anderson's the trainer, and David's, laying there, and George Anderson says, you want to get up now, David? He says, can I lay here a little longer, please? So so they finally get him up and he goes to the sideline. And I heard this story at the memorial for after he died. And I was talking to Jim Plunkett about some of these stories. And he tells me that, he wasn't dressed. And Hum thinks he's going to go back in the game and there's no way. So he goes to Jim. He says, hey, Jim, could you hold these for me? What's that? And he pulls 3 teeth out of his mouth. But he didn't go back in. But anyway, so he must have had 6 or 7 surgeries off of those injuries. So his knees and this and that. So this is 1985 now, and my sister was a graphic artist back in New York, and she was thinking about moving to Las Vegas, and working for a company there. So I said, well, I know a guy, David Hum, is in Las Vegas. Now, again, David's done. I know he's done. And, there's no one. So I call up David. This is during the season. And I call up David. I said, David, Jon Kingdon. And there's like a pause. There's like a long pause. I said, David, are you there? Yeah. What do you need? He said, "Oh, well, my sister, is looking to move to Las Vegas. She's a graphic artist. And I know you know a lot of people. Is there anyone you could set up interviews with?" And he goes, "You can hear, oh my God, I thought you were going to call me because I saw Jim Plunkett got shaken up yesterday and I really couldn't come and I didn't want to tell him." So he was wonderful, but he became the color guy on the radio, and he was really good. And I used to spot on the radio, and we got to be really good friends. And David came down with MS, multiple sclerosis, which is, it's rare for men to get it, but they get it. And so, I used to help him get upstairs, and and he was excellent at what he did. and it was tough because I'd sit next to him on the plane and he'd be sleeping. And if he moved in his sleep, he would like be moaning in discomfort, because this is just a horrible thing. So he finally did it for a couple of years. And this is my favorite Al Davis story, where he called up Al and said, "Look, I can't do the spotting anymore. I can't be involved with the team. I'm sorry." He says, "Well, David, we're going to find a way to keep you involved." And so what they did was he did the pre and post game shows, and they set him up. Al set him up with some kind of all the equipment that he would do all the talk about it before the game, what to expect, and after the game, and he did a show during the week. And he used to call me up, and I used to give him stories that people didn't have. I wasn't violating, that we're going to do this or that, but I'd give him stuff to make the show interesting. And he would do those shows, and I really loved the fact that Al never forgot him, and he was actually, even before they were very, very close. And David would tell me that Al would call him up and said, "David, I'm coming into Vegas," because Al loved to go to Vegas and shop and do stuff. He says, "Why don't you pick me up on this flight?" And he'd drive around with him all day. And he just, there was a great deal of affection between the two of them. And like David got into the first Southern Nevada Sports Hall of Fame. They had it in Las Vegas. And Al flew in and presented him. And he didn't do that for a lot of people. He did it obviously for the Hall of Fame and such. But they were that close. And it was just, it was really, sad, but that was David, and we would talk about a lot of stuff. We both had daughters that were similar in age, and so we would share stories like that. And I had a special needs son, and he was very, always asked about him, and was very empathetic and such, and it was just, and David. My favorite, one time I called him, I'd call him periodically, "How you doing?" and such. And he said, "I went to the doctor today." And the doctor said, "David, I'm afraid I can't let you drive anymore." And David looked at him and said, "Doc, you're not man enough to take these keys away from me," which I thought was great. And David knew it was going to happen, but he had to put up that one last, bit of fight against the disease. And again, I talked to him a lot. And he never, felt self-pity. If he did, he never shared it with me. And he just fought this thing right to the end. And, they had a great memorial service for him. I came in, they didn't push for a lot of people out of town to come into his funeral. But I was there. Steve Sylvester was there. Bob Nelson was a linebacker. He was there. Some Nebraska people. And they had the thing at the church, and then they announced, "Well, we'd really only like the family to go to the cemetery." And Steve Sylvester, I don't know if you remember, he was the ultimate utility offensive lineman.
Yeah.
And he could play both sides, guard and tackle. He could long snap if they needed him. And we got to be very good friends. And part of it was he and I were both born on the same day of the same year. So we stayed friends, and so David's daughter, Courtney, was walked by, and Steve said, "Gee, we were hoping to go to the cemetery if you don't mind." She says, "Of course we want you to go." I mean, because he knew how close, and Steve Sylvester was very, very close. His roommate for a long time, and myself and Bob. So we went there, and we drove by David's house and such. It was really, a very, very touching thing. And and then the next day, in fact, that afternoon, I remember we were staying at the hotel, and I was sitting there with Bob Nelson and they were telling stories about David, as a player and such. That stuff that was great. And I always had a great deal of affection and respect for Al, not forgetting about David that way. And and the players that were very good to him, very loyal to him, and most of them were that way. And I'll give you another one. Gene Upshaw was another one that Al really had a great deal of affection for, because he was always there for Al. And then one morning I woke up, and it was like in the off season. They showed pictures of, and I just turned the TV on, and I didn't have any sound. They showed Kenny Stabler, throwing touchdown. I'm thinking, oh my God, Kenny died. And I put the sound on, and it was Gene that they announced who had died. And Al called me in the office. He just felt so bad about Gene, and I told him a story that I was at the combine, the NFL scouting combine, that earlier in February. And I told him, I said, I was walking down the street and I saw Gene, walking towards me, and he really lost a lot of weight, but he looked good. And I said, geez, Gene, wow, you lost a lot of weight. Oh yeah, I've been working out and such. And then he died, not much longer after that. And I told Al that story. He says, Gene was scared of doctors, and they might have caught this early, but he wouldn't go. And but I really like Gene a lot, and and that I could share that story with Al. But he was a guy who hated people dying. It just was terrible. In fact, I wrote in the book, I happened to see a letter that a woman, Al always just say, "Oh, I'm trying to beat death," for his friends and such, and someone wrote to Al, and he said that. It's a nice story. He was really upset about Gene, but wrote Al, well, I understand how you want to defeat death, but have you ever considered accepting Jesus as your Lord and Savior? He'll give you eternal life. The fact that Al was Jewish again was, but that was, I kind of got a kick out of that one. But he got mad, when people died, and when Bill Walsh, had leukemia, and I guess that's just horrible, and the treatment is horrible, and then Bill just announced, I'm stopping the treatments. It's just not worth it. And and Al called me, that's just terrible about Bill, and I can't believe he quit. And I said, well, maybe the cure was worse than the disease. Bullshit. He got really upset about that. I can't believe it. And I was big on the internet. I used to always keep, I check the internet all day and just kind of keep a list of things and that I thought he might be interested in. And like for 2 straight days, people died that he knew, and I was the one to let him know it. And one time I'm walking by, the third day I'm walking by his office, don't come in here. I'm tired of you telling me who died and such and stuff like that. But he was very respectful. When my dad passed away, he sent this big bouquet and silver and black and a big, it was really nice. And the guy that delivered it, so Al Davis, Oakland Raiders, and the guy that says, "Wow, Al Davis sent this. Wow, this is better than the president sending it." So when I got back in town, I was out for like 4 days away, and I came back, was at a game, and went up to the press box, and he was there, and his brother was there, and his brother's wife, and I thanked them. They sent a very nice card, and I thanked. I said, Mr. Davis, thank you so much. And because he didn't, I think he appreciated my saying thank you, but he really didn't like people. And I said, well, the guy that sent it, it said that this is better than the delivering something than from the president, from Al Davis. He said that. He really said that, huh? So he got a big kick out of that. And he liked, that acknowledgement. And I was at the Hula Bowl, and the coach from Iowa. I just blanked on his name.
Oh, Kirk Ferentz?
No, before him. He was the guy that was named after.
Yeah.
And that show where the guy was the football coach.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Okay. Well, you'll get it. Anyway, so I was at Hawaii, and I'm walking by this guy. God, I just it's gonna kill me. Anyway, I had some Raider stuff on. He says, "Hey, make sure you tell Mr. Davis I said hello, and then tell him how I stole his offense when he was coaching at Fort Belvoir." And this guy was Hayden Fry. Thank you. Yeah, Hayden Fox was the guy on the TV show. So I did. I went back. This is what happened at the Hula Bowl, and said, by the way, Hayden Fry said, "Oh, Hayden said hello. That's good." And I said, he also told me to tell you how he stole your offense when you were coaching Fort. And Al boomed. He really, oh my God, he remembered that. And Al, loved. He took a lot of pride in the fact that he was at Fort Belvoir, and and it sort of kept him out of the war. But he was coaching the team, and such. And I mean, one time he asked me to. He was interviewing someone to be a special teams coach. See if you can get me the background of this guy. And I looked it up, and gave him this. He coached here. He played here. I said, it's fun. Yeah, you'll get a kick out of this. The guy was born in Fort Belvoir, and oh my God! So, he had a lot of stuff that he liked. I think the guy in charge was Mark Clark was the guy in charge, and I believe that's where Mark Davis got his name. He was named after General Mark Clark. So those were just kind of fun. Mickey Marvin. Okay, I'll give you my story on Mickey Marvin. Both good and bad. Mickey was he was like a wild man. He got drafted the year before I got there, 77, and evidently he was out there and was really kind of living the life. And then he became very, very religious, and he was a good offensive lineman. Played guard, played for a long time. And we were playing New England in the playoffs in 1984. It was the game where we were playing New England, the one where Matt Millen hits the guy in the head, and we were behind, and we're marching down the field, and he hits Marcus Allen, and we're going to be in position to win the game, and they called a holding penalty on Mickey. And normally, that late in the game, it better be serious. I watched the film, and he grabbed the guy's face mask and just pulled backwards on it, but he scouted for us, and I'll be honest, and he was a very nice guy, and he represented the team well. He was an awful scout. He really was. He was a scared scout. He was scared to recommend anybody, and he just, I'll give you how bad he was, and unfortunately, Mickey passed away, but there was a guy. Bruce Kebrick did a lot of work in the spring, and he looked at a quarterback at Valdosta State, and he you watch him in the spring. You don't have a lot of film, and evidently he had his best game. And Bruce says, "Gee, this guy could be a high pick." And Mickey calls him up and says, "Yeah, I watched this game. I was impressed. He might be a guy we could draft high." So we came into our meetings, and Bruce and Mickey, had their reports, and Mickey had given him a first round grade, and Bruce had given him a free agent grade. And Mickey, Mickey, well, what do you see? And well, Bruce, you liked him in the spring. Yeah, and I watched him in the fall, and evidently, I caught a good game, but I really don't like the guy. But what do you like about him? And and Mickey, was obvious that Mickey just gave him a grade because he thought that's well. Can he do that? Kent McLuhan, who was a great scout, he says, "Well, Mickey, he just did it." And then, and again, he was scared to recommend anybody. So I'll give you another. There was a guy, Bernard Robertson, and Mickey, he was at Tulane, and Mickey was the only scout that we had that went in there. And Mickey gave the guy a second round grade, and we didn't have a cross check going in. So he called Bruce, asked if he can get in there and watch film as well, because, a high pick, you want a second round. You want someone to back you up. So Bruce said, "Geez, I'm really busy. If I can get in there, I will, but I'm not sure if I can." So Bruce called me about that. I was traveling with the team, and we were playing New Orleans, and this kid was at Tulane, and Tulane was going to play Memphis that game. So I said to Bruce, "Well, I'll go to the game, and then I'll watch film, and I'll write him up." So I liked the guy. Now, I still remember, he was 6'2", 280. He was a tackle, but I thought with those numbers, he could be a guard or even a center. And I thought he'd be a pretty good player just off that game. And then I watched film and saw him physically. So we came into our meetings, and Mickey had given him a 7th round grade. And I said, well, geez, I thought you liked the guy, Mickey. But he's the area scout. So he's supposed to go first. So Mickey goes, well, you like him more than I did. Why don't you read your report first? So I said, all right, well, you want to, so why did you like when? So I gave my report, what I liked about him, what I didn't like about him. I projected him to be either guard or a center. I think, this guy could be a third round. I like him in the third round. And Mickey goes, instead of defending his report, says, well, I agree with everything you said. So give me a third round grade too. I mean, this is ridiculous. I don't want people to agree with me just to agree with me. If you don't agree with me, tell me. And but that was what he was. And in all the years he scouted there, I don't think he ever came up with a single player that he liked by himself. He really needed, people to back him up. And I know I'm being a little nasty about it, and I'll tell you why I'll be nasty about it, because we backed up Mickey. We covered for him a lot. I mean, Al knew he wasn't a good scout, but we had to do a lot of stuff to cover for him. And after Bruce and I were let go of the team, this guy, he's bad-mouthing us, which really, which I thought was really very ungrateful of him, that we covered for him a lot, and how stupid he was. The one guy, so who's he ripping me? Oh, I'm glad Juice and John are gone because, they were always, checking out what I was doing because we did it because he wasn't doing a good job. But we backed him, we covered for him for Al. And, so who does he saying this to? But my best friend in all of football is a guy named Terry Rabisky. And, he was an usher in my wedding. I'm the godfather to his son. And we were very, very close. And he's ripping me to Terry. So, and Bruce as well. So so I said, the hell with him. Now, I'm sorry he died, but, he had ALS and that couldn't have been good. But, I'll say this, there was probably nobody more prepared to meet his maker than whatchamacallit?
Mickey Marvin.
Than Mickey Marvin, because he's very, very religious. Jim Otto, he's asking about, and Jim, was retired, before I came in, and I guess he worked for the team a little bit, and again, so he wasn't working with the team when I was there, but I got to know him because he came to a lot of games and such, and and he would always travel with the team. I was very, very close with him. And I wasn't, but I got to talk with him a lot. And then, he was the same guy off the field that I imagine he was on the field. He was always a fired up guy. And he, when I owned a bunch of Burger Kings, and I used to tell him, this is what I did as a player. You got to do this in the office. And, oh, I'm sorry. I almost stepped on my dog there. A little terrier.
I have a question. All the guys you scouted, of all the players that you looked at over those 33 years, which one did the organization bring in that you were the most proudest of?
Good question.
Well, I love Napoleon Kaufman. And but that's, it's an interesting, well, I'll give you one. It's really an obscure person I'll talk about Napoleon real quick. It's an interesting story because, Al did not like little players. And it came down in that draft. It was going to be Tyrone Wheatley or Napoleon. We're going back and forth. And Napoleon was a lovely player. I mean, really he was like just a step below Barry Sanders. I mean, he was that good. And I think Al really wanted to take him, but in his heart, he wanted to take Napoleon. But in his head, I think he wanted Tyrone Wheatley because Tyrone was more big and strong and fast and all that. But just as a pure runner, Napoleon was the better player. Well, one pick before we picked, and I was really curious because Al, where he was going to go, and Tyrone Wheatley went one pick before us. So we took Napoleon, and was just
Giants picked right before.
Yeah, and so we took Napoleon, and was just a great player. And I'm sorry, that was me. Hold on a second here. I'm sorry, I just it slipped out of my. So Napoleon came in, and he was like the starting back, and he was very, very good. And then what happened was the Giants cut Wheatley, so we bring in Wheatley, and Wheatley actually is better as a starter for us than Napoleon. So Napoleon's is the backup to Wheatley, and it was a great combination. And I remember talking to Napoleon, and he played 5-6 years and was a really good player. And he said, "Geez, I'm thinking about retiring." And I said, "Geez, you got a lot of years left." "Well, I'm going to open up a church." And I said, "Well, I don't want to, it's a great thing to do, but when you're out there and you score a touchdown, you go on your knees and you point up to God, you got millions of people watching you on TV, and how many people in your church are you gonna, can you really reach at this point?" I'm not trying to deter you, but I just think, you can do that a little later. That's a pretty good point. And but he ended up quitting, retiring, and it worked out well for us on a sense, because we hired Charlie Garner, signed Charlie Garner, who was a really good player. And one quick thing on Charlie, on the tuck game, and Al always says this, and he says, Charlie Garner, before what happened was we got 2nd and 10, and if we get a first down, the game's over. And Charlie takes it wide, and he cuts up inside, he gets 9 yards. And Al always said if he broke it outside, he'd still be running. But he broke. And then, just to get to this, is another play that people don't talk about. We had that 3rd and 1, and we had a great short yardage 3rd and 1. We had
Frank Middleton, Lincoln Kennedy.
Frank Middleton. Well, Frank Middleton's the guard.
Yeah.
And the lead fullback is
John Ritchie.
John Ritchie is the lead, and behind him is
Crockett.
Zach Crockett. I mean, this was a great. So we call it the same. They haven't stopped us all year, and what happens is Ritchie goes through there, and I used to never forget a single that lineman that was really good. He's up for the Hall of Fame, that we signed as a free agent from New England. Great lineman.
Gogan? No,
defensive lineman for New England.
Defensive lineman for okay.
I'm sorry, I'm 69. I haven't worked in. Anyway, this guy comes in, Carl. Anyway, this guy comes in and he stuffs Ritchie, a big lineman. Ritchie's not supposed to take on. He's supposed to take on a linebacker, and he stuffs the whole thing. We don't get the first down. Well, what happened was I talked to the line coach, and he said that Middleton, who's supposed to block this guy, goes out for the linebacker. I mean, he just has a brain fart. I mean, it makes no sense. It's the most basic, fundamental play, and Frank Middleton blows it. So anyway, if we'd gotten the first down there, but Frank Middleton, not a lot of people bring it up. I bring it up. But anyway, so those are 2 plays that led to the tuck game, led to the tuck play. But anyway, so
actually, I think that because Lincoln spoke about that as well. I think that Lincoln said that Frank thought it was like it was going to the opposite side, or he had another hole in mind, or he heard the play was like 34 and it was 35. Wherever the hole was, he heard it at the wrong hole, which is why he went to where he was going, and that little mix up into one number is why they stuffed that play.
Well, I remember talking to the line coach, and he said that as soon as Middleton went for the wrong guy, he's like, "Oh my God." It's just, and I've always, I remember, what would have happened had we won that game. I know we would have, this is just true speculation.
The dynasty, and with the air quotes, wouldn't have occurred.
Well, who's to say that? But I'm talking about us. We would have gone to Pittsburgh the next week.
Oh, we would have whooped Pittsburgh.
And their quarterback was Cordell Stewart, who wasn't very good. We would have beaten Pittsburgh. Now, we would have gone to the Super Bowl, and we would have played the Rams. Now, I'm not sure that we would have played.
We would have matched up well with them, though.
Except New England had two really good safeties. Buckley, the kid from Syracuse, they had two really good safeties. We didn't have two good safeties. And one of them was Dorsett, and the other guy was an adequate player, but not
Pope. And because they're the two guys that ran into each other, that had the one touchdown that the Ravens had because they ran into each other.
Well, that was Dorsett screwed that one up too. And there's a guy, Rich Snead, who was at Tennessee when Dorsett was there, and he said, you know what, nobody gave up more big plays in big games than Dorsett. Mm-hmm. But that's anyway. But the reason I'm saying I'm not sure we would have beaten them, because I thought New England's safeties, the greatest show on turf with the Rams, their safeties really beat the crap out of those receivers and took them out of their game, where I'm not sure but the point being, if we had gone to the Super Bowl, I believe Al would have had to given John the extension at that point, which he had in his mind not to do. And I think Al just got tired of John getting all this attention. But if he'd gone to the Super Bowl, he'd have had to do it. John would have still been with us, and it would have been an amazing, another run, with Gruden there, and with New England and the Colts. And, when we had the one carryover year, with Callahan and such. And then after that, it was just, slow motion over the cliff or the waterfall, however you want to do it. But did I give you enough about Mickey? I think I spoke on a nice level.
Well, and like I said, John. And by the way, if this is a bit long, you let us know. Because
I'm having fun. These guys are bringing up. That's the first in all the interviews I've done. Someone asked about Mickey Marvin, and nice person, and he was very. Yeah, I tell you, my favorite story about Mickey was the scouts would come in December. We would, like I said, we'd meet in December, and I was the only one that lived. We were down in L.A. I lived in Manhattan Beach, and I used to have them one night come over to my house, and we'd barbecue or such, and this year, sure. Anyway, I just my daughter was about 3 months old, so I said, we had a restaurant called Chaluzzi's down in Newport Beach, and the guy was a big Raider fan. So I said, again, our daughter's young, let's go to a restaurant. This restaurant, the guy was a big fan. It was a great Italian restaurant. So we went there, and again, our daughter was she was born in December, January, February. She's like 3 months old, and my wife came along to the dinner, and the baby was getting a little restless. And Mickey said, let me hold her. And he's, a big, massive man. And he's holding my daughter in the crook of his arm. And, probably she weighs, 10 or 12 pounds or 15, whatever it is. And it was really good. And Mickey's like, singing a little religious tune to her, and she's sleeping. It was just that was really my favorite kind of a story about him holding my daughter like that. Yeah, no, that if you haven't read it in the book, it really talks about, there's some, Jim, one of the coaches at the owners meeting, they got up and they were talking about this play. And he said, look, if I go in a bar and I show the play to 50 people and 50 people say it's a fumble, it's a fumble, and then they're trying to defend it. Well, when we teach that the quarterback, he's bringing his arm down. Well, his arm's on the ball. And then Jim Fossil gets up, who was a head coach, and he, was a great quarterback coach. And he says, hey, I've never taught it that way in my life. And then the commissioner says, look, we're not going to take away, this Super Bowl from this owner. We're going on to another subject. He knew it was a losing subject but there's so many things that fell off of that kind of, again, I think the key thing was Gruden not being there after the 1 year after we had that success. And then, we went from him and we went to
Callahan, and then
from Callahan, was it the Shell thing was terrible, and and I'll give you, Shell was not a very, what the heck, I've been on a long, he wasn't a very good head coach, as simple as that. And Al, and I know Mike Lombardi was there, and he ripped the hell out of Art, before they hired him, which is fine, but after he was gone, after Art got the job, he was a little critical of him, which, he's the head coach. Well, Al called me about Art Shell. He says, well, what do you think about my rehiring Art? Well, I went into it. I mean, I went off on it. And in fact, I think I saw you had the picture of Lincoln Kennedy. And I told Al this story that, yes, look, I don't think he really likes coaching. I think he doesn't like working that hard. And I said, look, I said, Lincoln Kennedy's coming out in the draft. And I went up to Art. I said, look, there's one guy, that could be there when we pick on the line that we'd really like. It's Lincoln Kennedy. I said, just, there's only the only workout I want you to go to. We'll go up to Seattle, go to that workout. And he said, what's the date? I give him the date. And he looks at his calendar. Well, no, I'm going to be in Reno that day. Well, I said, well, who's in Reno? He says, nobody. I'm taking the day off. I said, well, I think you need to switch this. This is important. He said, I'm not switching. I'll get out of my office. I'm thinking, what? Anyways, that really upset me. This is before, so, it turns out that Lincoln went one pick ahead of us again to Atlanta, and we got Patrick Bates, who didn't work out that well. But anyway, I told Al that story and a couple other things, and he goes, well, you bring up a lot of good points, but I may have to hire him anyway. Now that one just, I said, what the heck? So I think what it was is Al wanted a complete yes man to do everything that he told him on totally, and it was a disaster. In fact, we could have been 0-16. We were 2-14, and ironically, the two teams we beat played in the Super Bowl that year, Arizona and Pittsburgh. So in fact, before the last game of the year, I think it was on the road, and I'm sitting there by myself, and Art comes over, and he knows I'm close with Al, and he goes, oh, JK, the players the players are coming up to me. He says, Coach, we got to have you back. We're really doing things right. We got to have you back. And I think he's nuts. And I looked him square in the eye and I said, Coach, I'm with you. What am I going to say? And he got fired like 2 days later or the next day and such. And then we had that whole fiasco with, Kiffin and Sarkisian and, all that's in the book and such. And that was
yeah. And again, folks, if you haven't figured it out and you haven't bought it yet, make sure you go and get Behind the Raiders Shield, Al Davis, written by John and his other shipmate, Bruce Keverick. Like I said, I love the book so much. I got 2 copies, one signed by John, one signed by Bruce. Make sure you get yours today. Go to Amazon and get your copy because it's definitely worth all that you can for it. John, real quick as well, I want
you can also get it on Audible.
On Audible.
The Audible's good. Again, I've listened to part of it, and people have said good things about it. But yeah,
this is an official Jon Kingdon pair of Raider shorts. Okay, so amongst all of the other swag that I have here in the room, like I said, I was going to say Stu Schwager says he's going to send me a jock strap that's his, but I got Jon Kingdon's shorts right here. Right.
Here's a quick Stu Schwager story. As long as
there you go.
Let me go off on one little thing. I said I had a really obscure player that I really liked about drafting that I took a lot of pride in. And you didn't. It was right. It was like 2 years maybe before I was gone. It was it was hard to find sleepers, and I was at the University of Michigan, and they had a player who was a linebacker named Stevie Brown, and he was about 6 foot, maybe 205, and he'd been a safety, but they moved him to linebacker, and I really liked this guy, and he just, and obviously not as a linebacker, But I thought that, I said the key thing is to see how he works out at his pro day, and he runs fast enough. So Kent McLuhan was going to be at that workout, and I asked him, really, watch this guy for me and tell me if you think he has a good workout. And Kent did. He says, yeah. So I pushed for him in like the 5th round, and they don't take him in the 6th round. We don't take him. Now we're in the 7th round, and Al, for some reason, is fighting me on it. He wants some guy who I didn't think. And turns out that guy gets picked. All right, we take Stevie Brown. So we bring him in, and he looks like a player. He's going to make the team. He deserves to make the team. And we had that guy we took in the 3rd round. Was it the 2nd round? From Ohio University, the safety.
Mitchell.
Yeah, Mike Mitchell, who we had in the 5th round. And what happens is we had Willie Brown speaks up for him, and Lionel speaks up for him, and John Marsh is the coordinator. I mean, these are coaches. They're not personnel guys. And Willie says, oh, yeah, I think he's like Tatum. And Woodson goes, oh, yeah, not Woodson, Lionel Washington, I think he's like Woodson. And then John Marsh says, oh, I think he's like Ronnie Lott. And I'm sitting there, and my jaw's dropping. And at the end of the meetings, everyone leaves, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just stunned. And Al's the only 2 in the room. He said, "What's the matter?" I said, "They compare this guy to Woodson and Ronnie Lott and Tatum." And Al, but we still take the guy. Anyway, the next year, Stevie Brown comes in, and he deserves to make the team. He's much better than the guy. And Al's, and he's going to cut the guy. I said, he says, oh, can you know how embarrassing it'd be, if we cut Mitchell now and keep this guy? And again, I always held my tongue, but I said, well, it's not as embarrassing as when we took him in the 3rd round. And it was the 3rd round. And he goes, hey, watch it. I said, and I apologize, but anyway, we brought him back.
I remember that we were when during camp we were doing the read-ups, and even the beat writers were saying how Stevie Brown was outperforming Mitchell, who was drafted. And they said Stevie Brown just was blowing up camp, was the best safety out there.
Yeah.
And the beat writers were saying that stuff. So it wasn't just you, John.
No. Anyway, so we brought him back from he was trying to go somewhere else, and I knew the agent. I said, look, I got the guy drafted. You owe us one. So he went to the practice squad. We activated him. He did really well. And then he cuts him again the next year. Stevie Brown goes on to the New York Giants, and he breaks their all-time record for interception yards in a season. So I kind of made sure Al saw that. And he got a big contract. Next year he blew his knee out, and that was the end of his career. But that's my obscure favorite. Someone's asking me about ranking the Raiders centers. You mean all-time centers or the Raiders centers this year?
All time.
Oh, all time. Well, Otto was before me. Obviously was great, but I really couldn't speak to that. Mosbar was really a good center. When they put him in there, he was one of the Al liked a big size in there, and he played really, really well, until he got poked in the eye, and that was the end of his year. Dave Dalby was wonderful. He was a tough guy and a funny guy and just a wonderful person off the field. And here's a Dalby story no one knows about. So they were cleaning out the playbooks, and the players turned the playbooks in, and they had stuff in there. And so one guy takes out all the stuff in Dalby's playbook, and there's a paycheck in there. And I don't know, it's like $20,000 or whatever it is. And Tom calls him in. He says, hey, Dave, if I give you $20,000, can you give me 10%? I guess so. He gives him this paycheck that he hadn't turned in, and that was David. He was wonderful. He had a very sad ending. He had issues with alcohol, and he ended up did away with himself. And really, but a wonder. He was great. Mosbar, yeah, Barrett Robbins, and maybe that was the curse of that position. Barrett was a wonderful player, and he was bipolar, and he did an amazing job of concealing it. Nobody at TCU knew about it because we went and one check back on that. And I learned that people who are bipolar, they self-medicate with alcohol. And I guess and I never got this confirmed, but I guess we changed a lot of the blocking schemes, late in the week, against Tampa. And I guess Barrett just went off the deep end and and disappeared, and so that was unfortunate. And there was that we had a back. Anyways, I think that really was a problem in that game. And I'm trying to think of any other centers, but again, Otto was probably great, but I really couldn't. But Dalby probably was second. Mosbar, was excellent. Who else am I missing? Anyone come to mind? But those were my guys. I guess the guy they signed as a free agent was really good for a while.
Oh, Rodney Hudson.
Yeah, Hudson, from what I heard in the stand, but I can't say I've really studied him. But that was always a really good position for us, center.
You said you had a funny story about Stuart Schweigert.
Oh, okay, here's Schweigert. Oh, I'm sorry. We drafted. Oh, that's the other story about the center. You might look. We drafted a guy out of Virginia Tech that was really a good center, and then he blew his knee out. So we were in the. There was a guy.
Yeah, the Italian kid, Napoli.
No, that's not it. But he was from Virginia Tech. If you look up the draft stuff, it's the same year we drafted Schweigert. So we were going to take, God darn it, Al wanted this safety out of wherever, Indiana, I think, and he was really a tough safety. But he wasn't a big guy, and he wasn't a real good cover guy. But he was a tough safety. And Kent McLuhan, again, who played cornerback for us, was resisting. We're gonna have to really adjust our defense because we always asked our safeties to cover. This guy's not a good cover guy, but yes, he's a tough guy. And the other problem is, as tough as he is, he's gonna break down at some point. But Al fought it, and Al, look, he's gonna take the guy, and it's not gonna be a bad pick. So we're happy to take him. And what he did which was really tough, he called Mike Lombardi and said, Mike was in the room at this point, and Mike was sort of the gossip guy. Is he going to be there when we pick? And, that's a tough spot to say, oh, yeah, he'll be there. Well, right before us, the Colts pick us. Jake Grove is the guy I'm talking about, the center.
I was going to let you know, Jake Grove. And Gennaro DiNapoli was from Virginia Tech, so I was correct.
Yeah, but he wasn't the guy we were talking about. Gennaro was a good player.
Yeah,
he played, but he wasn't a center. But he was a good player, and he had a good long career. I think went to the Cowboys. But So anyway, so Al is like all upset. We don't get this guy, the safety that goes to the Colts, who played for a long time, and so it's like, well, our next safety was Schweigert, but this was too high in the second round. So I think Norv was the coach, and Kebrick happened to be sitting next to him, and he says, "Look, I know we've been talking about our safeties, but this guy Jake Grove we have as a solid second round pick, and Schweigert we have as a later round pick." So suddenly Norv speaks up, and boom, boom, boom. Suddenly the line, everyone says, "Yeah, this is the pick to make," and so we took Jake Grove again, who got hurt early, which was unfortunate, and but he was a good center for. And then we ended up getting Schweigert in the third round. So because we brought up Jake, we probably cost Stewart about $500,000 in signing bonus.
We'll let him know that.
Yeah, that was the story. He wouldn't have known, but that was a better in the third round. So, and I just remember there was one thing where he was in the Senior Bowl, I guess it was. And this big big running back comes flying through, and Stewart kind of dives at his feet and misses him. And everyone says, business decision. And even Al laughed about that one. But Stewart was fine for a while. But I guess that's That's a bunch of stories I haven't talked about. I really appreciate people bringing up people I hadn't talked about. The Mickey Marvin thing, I kind of that got me off my chest. I hope nobody was too offended, but I explained why. And
It's the truth, though.
Yeah, and we love the fact that you're on here giving us information that people don't know. Raiders fans don't know, and we love to know.
That was great. That was fun. There was a lot of, great stuff. I give you another one that was pretty cool. I'll give you this is the last story because Chester McLaughlin was an amazing talent. I mean, he again, the way I say, Jamarcus may have been the most talented quarterback in the history of football and the most underachiever. Chester may have been the most talented, and I wouldn't say the most underachiever because he had some stuff, but he came in and Howie Long took him under his wing and he busted his ass, playing for Howie, and Earl Leggett was the line coach, and he was great. So when Earl left and Howie retired, Chester, when he wanted to play, he would play. So we're playing the Chicago Bears, and it's late in the game, and we're up by like 2 points, and the Bears got like 3rd and goal at the 2-yard line. And if they score a touchdown, we're going to have to score. So Neil Anderson, I still remember, runs in line, and he breaks to the outside, and there's nobody out there. And Chester at 6'4", 330, takes after him, and he horse collars him and pulls him back. Rest in peace, Chester. I got nice stories on Chester too. That would be illegal now, but it was legal then. And what happens is Bob Thomas, who was a very good kicker, shanks the kick. And it's late in the game. We just run the clock out and we win the game. So now I'm in the locker room and I happen to be standing, and Al happened to be standing there too. And Chester came in late because I guess he did TV interviews. And Al calls him over and says, "Hey, you, come here." And that was sort of spoken in an affectionate way. And he goes, "Chester, that may have been the best play on the line I have ever seen in all my years of football." Now, that's a compliment. I mean, Al Davis. And Chester goes, "Okay." And he walks in the locker room. And I think that was a problem with the players. They made so much money. All right, who cares? Now, again, not all of them are like that. But here's the story on Chester. So Bruce Kebricks is at University of Tennessee. And a guy walks into him. And he looks at him, "Hi, Bruce, how you doing?" Blah, blah, blah. And he looks, "This guy looks familiar." And Bruce, "Oh, yeah, great to see you, blah, blah, blah." And he leaves. And another coach says, "Who was that?" He said, "That was Chester McLaughlin." Chester must have probably weighed 240s. He probably lost like 90 pounds, looked great.
Wow.
That was one thing. And number two, he's a coach, the ultimate coach killer, Chester McLaughlin, and he's coaching. So I was at Stanford, and Chester was now coaching there. He was the assistant D-line coach. And I asked David Shaw, who was the head coach, I said, "Geez, how's Chester doing?" He says, "Doing great." He says, "I would make him my D-line coach, but I got to do new D-line coach. But if he ever leaves, I'll hire him immediately. But somebody should hire him." And I think he got offered like at Wyoming. He says, "Well," his wife says, "We ain't going to Wyoming." And then I saw Chester. I said, "Geez, Chester, I hear you're doing great. David says great things about you, but isn't it kind of ironic that you're coaching?" He smiled and laughed about it. "Yeah, I was difficult. Yeah, I was difficult." And unfortunately, and just one day, it's not like he was a big heavy guy, but one day he just didn't wake up and passed away. And that was really unfortunate because I really, I really came to like Chester, at that point. So that was Chester. That was that would have been a good story in the book, but we just kind of ran out of space.
And I'm going to get you out of here with this one, John. And you gave me the greatest segue.
Please.
Because of all of the things that you have said, there's another book in you.
Yeah. Well, there's some chapters, that much. I think what's good about the book is, it's not like, well, actually, if the stories come out, we'd be the ones that bring them out. But I haven't really heard people tell any other stories that certainly weren't in our book. And obviously, yeah, well, think about it. One of these days, I've started to make a bunch of ideas. I got a guy that was with the Raiders, I've been pushing to also write a book that would bring a totally new perspective that I would work with, but I won't bring that up. But
Save that.
one other
Save
thing,
that.
have you seen that Laker show on HBO?
Yeah.
I've had about 10 people come up to me and say they ought to do one of those on the Raiders. So I don't know. Anyway, some agent told me that he ought to do it, and he was like passing the book around. But that would be kind of fun to do. So,
Well, creative consultant would be Jon Kingdon.
that'd be
And
one of them.
they actually did a movie on the Raiders. It was called North Dallas 40, but we all know that.
Well, that was
the replacements.
Yeah,
The replacements were the Raiders.
Anyway, well, this is great. You know what? I had fun, and gosh darn, we got to do it again. I'm absolutely always fun doing it.
John, again, and we love having you on, and I know that you have a very tight schedule. So trust me, anytime, and I mean this, anytime you said, hey, Jack, I want to sit and I want to converse and tell stories, you let me know, and we'll have you on in the season, out of the season, anytime you want to be on, and we'll do it for you. And we always appreciate, and I know I always do. I appreciate, like I said, why else would I keep your shorts around my house?
We could do 25 of these shows and still not know everything that this man knows about.
That's probably true. That was fun. And people asked me. I'm glad they asked. About things that I really hadn't been asked about. So my hat's off to your audience too. Hey, Jack, it was nice to meet you.
There's two great historians in the Raiders organization, you and Phil Villapiano.
Oh,
You've got these amazing stories. And that's why my name is OG Jack Daniel, because Phil gave me that nickname.
Okay, yeah. You know what? I got to give you one last story then. The Super Bowl ring story about Phil?
No.
Oh.
He came to a game, and I was walking with him up to the press box, and people, hey, recognize me, bing, bing, and there's some guy in a wheelchair, and the guy says, and Phil starts talking with him. What's well, I'm going through therapy, and I should be able to get out of it, but it's hard. I don't know if I can get out of it. And Phil says, look, here's my Super Bowl ring. When you go out of that chair, you return it to the Raiders. And I'm like, oh my God. And that's what happened. And I remember I don't know I think I'm sure Papa was the guy there. And he had him on the radio before the game, returning the ring or whatever. But Phil was great. Yeah. That was an amazing story. Here's my last one. I once went on a date with one of the cheerleaders and such, and she, it's not going particularly, and all she talked about was Phil Villapiano. So anyway, the next day I went to the woman who was in charge of the cheerleaders. I said, hey, that's so and so. Is she dating Villapiano? She goes, yeah. So I only said nice things about Phil, but no, I love Phil. He was great. He was. He was all good, and that's I'm getting lightheaded now. So,
well, again, John, and again, I appreciate you spending an extra, probably 45 extra minutes with us, because I know that you were tight on time, and again, thank you. If you haven't, excuse me, say thanks to John for this time. If you haven't bought the book yet, it's on Amazon. Either get the hard copy, get the Audible book, but buy the book. Al Davis behind us. Yeah, I'm sorry, product placement. I had
Behind the Raiders Shield. You definitely, this is a must read. According to what I've read, I downloaded it. I'm going to get the email from Captain Jack so I can get a hardcover signed by you, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the knowledge you've given Raider Nation tonight.
Thank you. This was fun. I haven't had this much fun in a long time. I sure appreciate it.
Oh, I'm grateful that you came.
I'm waving somewhere. There it is.
Yeah. Anytime, John. Thanks again, sir. And I will get with you offline and get with other things as well. But we definitely appreciated all the time that you spent with us. We thank you, both of us.
A lot.
That was great. It's always a pleasure. Thanks so much.
All
Bye-bye
right.
now.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks,
Good
John.
night, sir.
Okay,
Wow.
folks, I'm telling you, and this is not BS. Jon Kingdon knows so many great stories, and I've had the pleasure. This is at least the third time I've had him on the show, and the stories are, some of them have been have come back, but you'll almost always get at least 2, 3, maybe 4 stories that I've never heard before. John
Tonight.
knows a lot more. Okay, so say thank you to him. But if you haven't gotten it, get another copy. Get another copy of the book, okay? And Bruce was able to join us one time as well. We had John and Bruce on the show at the same time. Unfortunately, Bruce wasn't able to join us via video because his daughter couldn't get the link to set up right. So, but he was on via a phone call. So make sure you get Al Davis, Behind the Raiders Shield, Bruce Kebrick, and Jon Kingdon. Go out, get the book, and it's a great way to say thanks. And anything that you can, like I said, do me a favor, please. On both of our channels, that's OG's channel and my channel, please make comments after the show. Please make comments after the show about how great this show was because of Jon Kingdon, okay? It helps me out, it helps OG out, and I want to be able to show John how respected and how thoughtful and how much appreciated he was for both of you. So go on both of our channels, please, and just let us know. And because, again, John will come on again. He will come on again.
Dude, that was one of our most amazing interviews, and I learned a whole lot from this man. He was incredible. He is incredible. Like, he knows stuff, being 33 years in with the Raiders organization, being close to Al, being close to everybody. He and the people that he wanted to bring to the team. And I'm not going to get into that. I think if we do another show, we should do it strictly on that, because I heard there are a lot more people than what he talked about tonight. So anyway, Nation, thank you for joining us. Everybody in the chat, we appreciate you being here and your questions. Captain, I feel blessed that I got to hear from this guy. He was awesome.
Yeah, and
Next week.
Okay, and again, we appreciate Kelly. Get better. I hear Kelly. Please take care of yourself, Kelly. And again, for all of the people out there, we say kind thoughts for all of our shipmates, ladies and gentlemen that are going through things. And again, also keep kind thoughts for Anna Diaz and her husband. Her husband was in the hospital for a bit. So again, we have a big family. I know that I will be out in Madeira in a little under 2 weeks. I'll be out there for Raider Nation Explosion. Please get your tickets for Raider Nation Explosion. Go over to Raider Tones Facebook. Go to Mob Boss's Facebook. Get your tickets for Raider Nation Explosion. Only $10. And also, Bill Romanowski is having a signing, so you can get your tickets to have your Bill Romanowski stuff signed. So that's on the Eventbrite. And again, great times here. And I appreciate everybody being here. Unfortunately, my internet is screwed up, and I couldn't get my own YouTube to come up, so I wasn't able to see what was going on. So my apologies there. I didn't want to screw with it while I was doing this show, because I didn't want to lose the show. So that's why I was a little bit upset, because I couldn't do things, but I at least kept the feed up. But again, we thank you, both OG and I. OG, any other last words from you there, Shipman? Again, thanks to Jon Kingdon.
Yes, thanks to Jon Kingdon. I feel like that was knowledge that, guys like you and I don't have, because he was there. He was inside. And he knows things that we don't know. I would look forward to an interview with him again anytime. also, who are we going to have next week, Cap?
Well, if all goes, oh, I haven't told you yet, have I?
No. Yeah, you did.
Oh, I did? Okay. If all goes as planned, we have somebody that John was talking about. Somebody that is owed $500,000 because of Jake Grove. And we'll have to talk to him about that next Tuesday night. Again, if all goes as planned, 9:00 Eastern, the one and only Stuart Schweigert will be here on another Chronicles of the Black Hole.
And we're going to do a deep dive.
Yep.
We're going to do a deep dive. And if any of you watch Stuart's channel, you know he's not afraid to tell it like it is. And it's going to be awesome to have him in. And we're going to be questioning him. We're going to let everybody question him. And again, this is going to be not your typical Stu show. This is going to be something where we go more in depth.
Yeah. And no, it won't be on Roku because Stuart probably will drop an F-bomb within about the first 30 seconds.
And so will I.
Yeah.
He's going to call me some kind of name. But listen, guys, we're trying to bring you content like this that informs you, gives you some inside information. This is what we're trying to do. If you're not subscribed to Captain Jack's channel, go subscribe, man. He gets these interviews. He's the one who lines these up. If you go to my channel and subscribe, I appreciate it. If you're not subscribed, guys, we're not going to contact you and ask you about your extended auto warranty. It's free. Doesn't cost anything. Just subscribe. Hit the notifications. All notifications. Hit the like. It doesn't hurt. But I got to tell you, we're trying to bring you guys all the old school stuff we can, all the history, things that are going on. And, this is the kind of content we want to provide in the off season. When the season starts, yeah, we're going to jump into the season. But right now we're trying to bring you, this man just brought us from 1978 until he left the team 33 years later. He talked about it all along that line. He was a great scout. He knew Al Davis. He was kind of his right-hand man.
He was.
You're not going to get that kind of info from everybody. You're going to get it here. We're going to make, I really definitely want to interview this guy again, because I'm telling you, I got a bajillion questions that I would love to ask him now. And after the book, I'm going to be doing the Audible this weekend. He's going to send me a signed copy, which I'm never going to break the binding on, and go from there. But guys, we really appreciate you pulling up and learning more about the Raiders from 1978 when he joined till 33 years later. It was very informative.
Okay. Well, hey, Anthony, I'm sorry to, different likes for different people, but we like I said, we have great content on here because we have guests that not everybody will ever have the thing on. But again, Anthony, I appreciate you being here for the show. I appreciate everybody being here for the show. Tito, I'm sorry I was 30 seconds late. But there was a reason why I was 30 seconds late, because I'm getting things squared away. No, I know, Andy. I said, everybody has their likes and dislikes, and what somebody's cup of tea might not be. But like I said, I mean this. I'm not trying to single you out. I'm just saying thank you for being here, because you watched.
I mean, this man was a scout for the Raiders for 33 years. A lot more players that he wanted that Al Davis refused, and that's the show I want to have next. I'm telling you, there's so many big names. Al Davis didn't want Ray Lewis or Brett Favre, and there are a lot more players that he wanted over the course of history that are Hall of Fame players that Al Davis nixed it. Went, nope. And
the one best chapter in this book talks about the draft and what they used to do with the draft. And he did allude to it because it's in this book as well. And he talked about it with Todd Marinovich. That portion was here in this book because, you know, the guys had the guys, oh yeah, we hear really good things about Todd Marinovich. You said, well, who are you hearing this from? Oh, Marv. Well, Marv is his friggin' father. And Marv played for the Raiders. And
so
Marv
we passed on Brett Favre to get Todd Marinovich.
The reason why that Todd is the way that Todd Marinovich is, which is, you know, that's just the way it is. But,
right. We passed on Brett Favre to get Todd Marinovich. We passed on Ray Lewis. Think about that, guys.
Yeah.
This guy wanted Ray Lewis. And Al said no. Too short.
Yeah.
Think about this. So he's got great stories in his book. Go get his book. Like, it's, from what I've heard in the reviews, it's one of the most insightful commentaries on Raiders history there is. I ordered it. I got it on Audible. I'm going to be listening to it this weekend. And then I got to go to the captain to get his email so he can send me a signed copy, which I'll never crack the binding on. I'll just leave that, set that aside.
I had these cracked, so I actually was kind. John was kind enough to sign it, and then Bruce, I got one, and Bruce, I sent it to Bruce, and Bruce signed it. So, like I said, they as you can see, I got both copies on my little mini library. Right over there is my big Raider library, and it's all full of Raider stuff. So,
well, I'm going to get my copy, but I'm not breaking that binding. I'll listen to it on Audible and get it there, and then that copy is going into my library of I own this, but it's never been cracked.
Yeah, and Ed Winchell. Yeah, get I definitely, and Jack Kenna, send me your number and I'll send it to Edwin. Oh, good. He says for sure. Yes. You guys talk to each other. Okay, folks, I'm going to get out of here. It's a long Tuesday. And again, I appreciate you being here. I want to show you as well that if you want to get some really great bling, Santiago Romero, look him up on Facebook, Santiago Romero. He's the one that gave me I bought this, but this is where you can get some really great bling. You know, the owl bling. I have the bling from behind as well, which is the Josh Jacobs one. He's got a lot of good stuff. He will be over there at Madeira. Tito, I'll be late when I have to be, okay? But appreciate that as well, okay? And you know what? I'm going to tell you this as well, Tito. It's something that I learned. I was not late. I was detained elsewhere. I'm never late. I was detained elsewhere.
I'm running way later than I thought I should because I got to get up early. My schedule has gone out the freaking window. Things have changed. I'm no longer this semi-retired part-time guy. I'm now full-time. Plus I've got meetings and stuff afterwards. And I didn't think I'd be able to stay up this late, but I've been taking vitamin supplements, doing all the right things, moving around, walking, stuff like that, because I'm drinking a lot more water, not stay hydrated, but it's because of the radiation treatments I went under. I would all of a sudden fall to exhaustion. I'm avoiding that now, and I took a lot of tips, but I am got to get up early. Love hanging out with you, brother. I will call you tomorrow. Let's talk.
All right, we got it. Again, hey, good seeing you there, OG. To everybody here, remember, I will be on tomorrow night, Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. 7:30 p.m. Eastern is the Wild Wild West show. Wild Wild West show. Pretty soon at 9 o'clock on Wednesdays, it'll be NFL Nation Live with myself, Ref Guru, and Violator. When we start kicking in, we'll be starting to get those. So I'll be on twice. Wild Wild West and then NFL Nation Live. That'll be on Wednesdays. Thursday nights is You Don't Know Jack About Sports. That's 9 o'clock Eastern. And then obviously Sundays, Ask Captain Jack. If I have other shows, I will say this. If you are a member of my channel, not a subscriber, but if you are a member of my channel, you get an exclusive 30-minute video each week. Captain Jack's Raiders Report. Captain Jack's Raiders Report. Only for paid subscribers. You can be a member of the ship's company, or you can be a member of the Chiefs Mess and you get your Captain Jack patch for free. If you help me and you subscribe to me and you support my channel, I thank you by giving you a very special show. Only paid subscribers get that show. OG gets that show because he's a paid subscriber.
So it's like fans only. There's a brass pole.
And on that note, I got to get out of here. We're at 1:56. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll see you Thursday. We'll see you Sunday. And we'll see you, like I said, subscribe to my channel. Subscribe, but pay. Join the channel, and you'll see that show. OG, thanks for being here, shipmate. You take care, brother.
All right, you too, brother. And I'll be back soon. I just got to use this damn work schedule. There,
All
I
right.
cussed.
All right. Well, you said damn. That's okay. Take care, everybody. We'll see you.
Good night.
Good night.